Ladies and gentlemen, my guest this morning, she is in the studio with me. You know I do the phone interviews and the live interviews. And like I said, I love both of them, but I really love the live interviews because I get a chance to experience the energy of the other person. And that's what's going to happen this morning as she's sitting here. I actually had a chance to be ATC with her, air traffic control. I actually talked to her and she wasn't that far off. And I'm appreciative that she got up and drove in this rain this morning because it was pouring this morning. So my guest this morning is Naseem Rochette. She's the best-selling author of The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over, a motivational speaker and a digital transformation leader at Google. She has more than 20 years of sales experience at leading technology companies and holds a master's in journalism from Columbia University and an MBA from Rutgers University. Throughout her career, Naseem has helped people solve problems, ideate possibilities, and foster collaboration. However, it wasn't until her near-death moment that she found her real courage and most impactful gift, the strength to appreciate and share the imperfections and insights that inspire transformation in all of us. In 2018, on the way home from work, Naseem was run over by a car 3 times. Yes, really, 3 times. The accident left her with a traumatic brain injury and forced her to confront her own definition of strength and the identity she had worked tirelessly to build. Through her journey to recover and rebuild her life, she has found another dimension of strength that has made her a better leader, colleague, and human. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Naseem Rochette. Naseem, good morning.
Good morning.
I am glad to get you here, have you, because I really got nervous this morning when all that rain was going, because when I left to come to the studio at 5 o'clock, it was pouring. And I mean pouring. I said, oh my God. I said, Naseem probably is going to call me and say, can we do this by telephone?
Absolutely not. I said I would be here. It was pouring, but I have my coffee and I'm ready.
I know that's right. Well, again, thank you so much. And, for those of you in the listening audience, and I know one particular person or one person in particular who is going to relate to Naseem's story, and that is my aunt. That is Princess. Princess is living and went through a horrendous experience, kind of, sort of like Naseem in, I believe it was 2000. And that road to recovery, she will be able to relate to your story. Now, folks, as we share Naseem's story, we're going to talk about the physical, but we're also going to talk about the spiritual, because she talks about in terms of the transformation that came about as facing death. I mean, being there and having the opportunity to come back to life, it is a life-changing experience. So I just read her bio. We just said good morning. So, Naseem, before, usual, my first question is kind of like, at any point as a child or as a teenager, did you aspire to be an author?
I don't know that I aspired to write a book or a memoir. I did enjoy writing. And, I did get a master's in journalism because I do like telling other people's stories. I was always pretty private, had absolutely no intention of ever telling my own, or did I ever think I would have an interesting enough story to go out and tell. But, as we'll talk about this morning, I went through an experience and I really felt compelled to share some of what I learned, to pay it forward. But was never in the plan.
Okay, so like many of my guests that come on, as children, like they are, I wanted to be an author. And I've had folks who are authors that says, I'm not an author. I said, but you have a book.
I feel like I'm not an author. I still feel, I shouldn't be saying that out loud.
No, over the 23-year period, you would not believe how many times I've heard authors say, but I'm not an author. I said, but you have a book. So you are an author. But in any event, I can understand, because in many instances, when we go through a horrific experience like that, writing becomes cathartic. In other words, you get a chance through the writing to heal and to express and to get things out. Did you find it? Because we're going to get into the incident in a minute, but we're talking about just how the book came about. And then we're going to get into why she wound up writing the book to begin with. So did you find that as you were detailing the events that, it helped you heal or see things or...
I think so. When I started writing the book was during COVID, and the experience was really hard, Mark, because talking about myself, it just, it doesn't seem that interesting. Like, I wanted to share, okay, these are the things I learned, but all the contextual information around that was really, really very difficult to distill. What do you need to know versus what is gratuitous? What is interesting? What is just, why is she telling me, what shoes she's wearing?
Well, you know what? And thankfully, I have not had a near death, and I pray that I don't have one. But when that happens, from everything that I've read, because I've read a lot of books on the subject, you have an appreciation for things that folks might see as small. Like you just said, what shoes I'm wearing today. You might look at the flowers differently, the butterflies. You have a different appreciation and lens whenever you've either had a near-death experience or faced death. And
you're spot on. So I did, for me, it was some of maybe that near death, but some of the forced slowdown, because I was not able to operate in the same speed that I was before the accident. Just the recovery of the accident forced me to slow down and think differently. Because I'll tell you, right after in the near death, I was kind of like, yeah, whatever, I lived, so I'm going to be back to work in 2 days. I had no intention of slowing down.
All right, I'm going to read from the preface. On May 21st, 2018, I was hit by an SUV and run over 3 times. The car went forward, backward, and forward again, eventually stopping on top of me. While I was pinned underneath it, I had no doubt that I would die, that I'd leave my husband a widower, leave my 3 children without a mother. But here I am, years later, very much alive, yet changed. The person I was before the accident and the person I am now are different, with a new set of limitations and an altered, world view. In those first very tough months, I made the decision that this accident would be a happy story. I decided to accept and even appreciate my changes, my cracks as a part of my journey. On the first anniversary of the accident, my family and I decided to memorialize the day. I almost died by remembering that I lived. We decided to call it that day the Unbreakable Day. It's our new holiday. Now, every year on May 21st, we celebrate Unbreakable Day. We celebrate the fact that I am here, that we are here together, and that I've learned a thing or two about life in the face of death and its aftermath in a long and ongoing recovery. I believe at some point, everyone has an unbreakable day. Yes. Or days. If you're alive, you've survived. See, this is what I was saying. We're going to talk about her accident, but it will apply to just about any difficulty or challenge that we're going through in life. No matter who you are or the particulars of what happened, you've been through something, and you did the best you could at the time. You continue to do the best you can. Every day gives you the opportunity to choose how you view your pain and how to use that pain in transforming your life. I know that it is easier said than done. So I am hoping that by sharing my journey with you and the things that I have learned, I can help you shape a story that makes you feel a little unbreakable too. Now, let me tell you how Naseem and I met. If you all remember when I had Paul Simendinger on the show, when we were talking about his book that he wrote about Roy White, Paul had said, when I leave here, Mark, I'm going to this book fair sponsored by Passaic County. And I didn't know anything about it. So when he, as the kids can say, hit me to the deal, I said, oh, Paul, you know what? I'll stop. I'll come out as well. So I'm walking around. I had booths set up all over the park out in Clifton, Passaic. It's in that area, Clifton, Passaic area. And they had booths set up all around. I'm walking around. I saw Paul. Matter of fact, Lou Picone, who was on a few weeks ago, I met him there. And I met Naseem. I'm walking around, and I see this hat. That caught my eye. It was my fraternity colors, black and gold. And because I've been going through some personal things over the last few years myself, the title on the hat immediately caught my eye. It said Unbreakable. And I said, oh, I have to have that hat. And I went up to Naseem, and she was the author, and we started talking, and I said, I got to have you on my show. We got to tell your story on my show because I take my hat off to all of you. And like I said, my aunt had a horrific accident similar. She wasn't under a car, but she was slammed into a wall on one of these horse and buggy carts. The horse got spooked, went off on these high-speed chase, and made a right turn. The trailer slammed into the wall, and she slammed into the wall with it. And she had to rebuild everything again. So she's my role model. I take my hat off to you all that can go through something horrendous like that and still be able to accept, because I struggle with acceptance. I struggle with change. So talk to me a little bit about, like, first off, how did the accident come about?
Yes, it's a good place to start. So, back in 2018, let me set the context. It was not a rainy day like today. It was a gorgeous, sunny spring day in May. And, it was one of those days where you feel like a badass. You just feel fabulous. I was actually, in my big heels. I had just come back from work. I mean, I honestly felt fabulous. Work was going great. Life was good. And it was around 4:00 in the afternoon. So, middle of the day, very sunny. I'm in the town where I live, South Orange. And I asked my husband to pick me up. It was a sunny day, so I could have walked home, but I was in my 5-inch heels, so I didn't want to walk the hills of South Orange. So, I said, meet me before I have to tackle those hills. And I saw him. He was catty corner across the street, and I could have just crossed the street to him, but there were 2 crosswalks. And so I said, let me be respectful. We're in front of the middle school. Let me use the crosswalks. So I crossed the first crosswalk. And then I was in the middle of the second crosswalk when I saw a car coming at me. Now, I was in the crosswalk only a few feet from my husband in my 5-inch heels. And, the car was going slowly. We were in residential. So the car hit me, and I was still standing. I was fine. The car stopped, and I thought, my gosh, she's hitting me. I'm feeling fabulous on this gorgeous day. But I was fine. I was standing. I was worried I might be bruised, late for dinner. But no big deal. And Mark, then she accelerated. The driver accelerated and drove forward over me. And then she reversed and drove over me a second time. And then she went forward and drove over me a third time.
And you felt the car doing that? You could feel the car on you?
Oh, yes. I was conscious throughout the entire experience. Interestingly, though, I wasn't feeling pain. I could feel the pressure. I could see what was happening. But I was just lost in thought. When it first happened, and she first drove over me, I was screaming, other witnesses were screaming. And when she drove over me the second time is when life really, truly slowed down. And I was sure that I was going to die. I was hearing in my husband's voice that he was watching his wife die. And, my thoughts, it was like I had 20 minutes of dialogue with myself, reflecting back on life, my kids, regrets or really no regrets, and just thinking about how I'd lived and accepting that I was going to die.
So wait, all this is going through your mind. Now, is this kind of like, in a movie, whenever like scenes like this happen, it's like everything either it was in slow motion or everything goes really fast, or what was the experience for you?
It was like a movie. Everything was in slow motion. I was replaying moments with my kids. I was thinking about why I didn't write them letters, because I traveled a lot for work, and I would always think, I should write the kids a letter, but I never wrote the letters. I sent the text from the plane, but I never wrote, long letters with my ideas about life and things I wanted to share. But in that moment, I was reflecting back on the times we had together. I thought, do they know me? Do they know what I would say in those special moments of their life? And, as they graduated and weddings and all those things. And then I thought, what, they do know me, because we've had fun. We've taken spontaneous vacations. We've enjoyed moments together. I've been present with them. And, I did find some peace, feeling like, okay, what, they do know who I am. And, Mark, I should say that for me to find that peace and for me to feel happy and look back at my life and feel some satisfaction was huge, because what I talk about in the book, and I'll briefly share here, is that for the first 25 years of my life, I was really shy and insecure and uncomfortable with who I was. And it probably took another 10 or 15 years for me to figure, to become a person that I liked, to really grow into that person that I was, 5 years ago when I was run over by the car. And the person I was 5 years ago was finally somebody that I was proud of.
Well, I'm sitting, and I'm not being rude. I actually put a little clip of it on Facebook. I let folks see that you're here live, and I put a little clip there. I'm not being rude with that, because I'm doing that now to let folks know, look, tune in. I'm sitting here, as Naseem is telling this, and she'll attest to it, I'm sitting there mouth wide open, jaw dropped, because the experience that she's describing is just like they describe in the movie, or if you've read it, like all of this, while this is happening, those are the thoughts that are sailing through your mind.
That's exactly right. It is really like it happens in the movies. It is slow motion through your life. Because
you have a car on top of you, and you're thinking about, did I write my kids letters?
Yep. and while, so I'm thinking about, did I write my kids letters as I'm watching the tires come over?
That's why I'm sitting here awestruck. All these things are going through your mind like, did I write my kids letters? Did they know I was there? Did they know that I loved them? My husband's watching me. All this is going through while you have an SUV on top of you.
Yeah, I know. It felt like I was, in my mind, I was there for 20 minutes talking to myself. But, I was watching the tires actually ran over me 5 times. Over my knees, over my chest, and actually even over my head and neck. In the book, you'll see there's a picture of the tire marks on my neck, which I actually call my favorite accident picture, because I thought, when it all, it was all said and done, I was like, who's going to believe me that the tires went over my head and neck and I'm still here?
Well, at any point, did you think you were going to die?
Oh, yes. When the car ran over me the second time, I said to myself, something's not right. This is going on too long. And that's when I really, when I started the real reflection on my life and accepting that I was going to die. I was, 100% sure. I won't even say 99. 100% sure that I was going to die, because I had been, trying to wiggle, move around underneath the car and get out of it. But I wasn't getting out of it. It was just over and over me.
I'm sitting here literally in amazement. And like I said, I'm familiar with it only because my family experienced it 23 years ago. But it's still, just to hear you share that of what was happening, because you were still conscious. It's not like the car knocked you unconscious and you were still conscious. You knew there was a car on top of you. You knew something has gone really bad here, and that I could possibly be dying.
Yes, it was. Wow. Yeah, and not possibly. I heard it in the voices of the people around me. I heard it in their cries. I heard it in my husband's cries. I was not getting out of this.
All right, listening audience, because Naseem is live with me in the audience, if you want to call and you have a question or something, you can actually call this one, because I don't fool around with the phone if I have a guest on the phone with me. But if my guest is live, you can call. And this story, you ought to have some questions on this. But I also understand if the phone does not light up, that does not mean people are not listening, because I listen to radio all the time and I don't call. But the number is 973-720-2738. You can also text your question. If you want to text it and not go on the air, you can text it to me. I'll still see it. So if you want to text it at 973-720-2738, or if you want to call and you have a question for Naseem, you can do that as well. The title of the book is The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over. The title in and of itself is interesting, because, it's an oxymoron. You don't expect to have a benefit from being run over. And so that's another thing that caught my eye, was the fact that they were like, whoa, wait a minute. You kind of scratch your head here. Wait a minute. I was run over, but I get benefits from it. That's the happy story she said she wanted to tell.
And actually, Mark, let me just tell your listeners that you can ask me anything. People often wonder, is it triggering? Can I talk about it? But, I made the choice to become an open book in sharing my memoir. So, anything you want to ask me, please.
Well, and you're so right, because it is through people sharing their stories that other people get helped. Now, that particular day at the book fair when I bought your hat, I shot a little Facebook video with the hat on. And I went saying, I'm unbreakable. Just like this hat says, I don't care what has come at me. I don't care who has done what or said what. I am unbreakable. So I did a little video that day in the park with this hat on.
Thank you.
And but it's because it sends a message, unbreakable.
Well, I often talk about now, and one of the best parts of writing this book is, and I talk about this in the book, one of the best parts of sharing the story is that when I share, other people share. And, as we have all gone through something, but what we're not used to, and, when I talk about the new dimension of strength, is for so many of us, being strong is keeping it all together. For me, being strong was not showing any weakness, was not accepting help, was just managing it all and making it look easy. And so when the accident happened, I didn't want anyone's help. I was like, I got it. Don't bring my kids dinners. We don't need rides. We don't need any help. And I had to learn, one of the most important things I learned is that the accident didn't just happen to me. It happened to everyone that loved me. And accepting help and sharing my cracks, the things that were going on, is actually another dimension of strength.
You're absolutely right. Because it's all about perspective. It's all about, sometimes the things that we think are important, we can go through something and realize that it's not. And then we begin to see things and realize what really is important. Now, just stop. I'm getting into the book again. And she starts with a quote by Lao Tzu. New beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. Totally agree. Like I told you a couple minutes ago, I don't do well with change. I don't do well when something goes wrong with me. I have a hard time with accepting. But eventually, you don't have a choice. You have to. So how was now I'm in my 5-inch heels. I'm all that in a bag of chips. It was an amazing day, and bam, you're now put into this accident situation where now, what did you lose? Did you lose any faculties or mental or walking or talking or what?
Yeah. Good point. We should talk a little bit about the injuries. So, much to everyone's surprise, I did not break any bones. The car ran over me 3 times, tires over me 5 times, but somehow I did not break any bones. I did not have a skull fracture, but I was completely broken. I could not, I really couldn't see. I had a very bad, the car ran over my head. I had a very bad concussion, traumatic brain injury, so I could no longer think. Even though things weren't broken, the tires ran over my body. I couldn't move my body. I couldn't walk. I couldn't hold a coffee cup. I couldn't shower. I couldn't see. I couldn't bear light or sound. I couldn't be hugged or touched by my kids. And, I couldn't accept that I was not the same person that I was the day before. In fact, I went home, as I mentioned earlier. I actually, at the hospital, I said to my husband, I was like, tell my boss I'll be out for 2 days. I'll be back to work on Thursday. Because I thought, what? If I didn't break any bones, well, why not? I'll think my way through this. I have a strong mind. I know how to solve problems. But you know what? You can't think your way out of everything.
No, you can't. Because as you're telling us, what are you? Because you kind of touched on it when you said, I wasn't the way I was yesterday. What was it? What was going through your mind was like the loss. Like whatever I had yesterday, I just lost with that accident. In terms of, like you said, I can't see. You didn't know whether or not you were going to get your sight fully back or not. You didn't know what was going to go on. I mean, what? So,
first physically, I was unrecognizable. Obviously, and I, couldn't move, couldn't walk. So physically, but. I did feel like those things would eventually come back.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah.
Because you could have thought the other way and they might not have. I mean, the fact that you kind of felt they're going to come back helped them come back.
Yes, I think so. I think, mindset plays as a big role in my recovery. And I was lucky that I did feel that I would eventually, kind of walk and shower and, hold my coffee cup, zip my sweatshirt. My face, I had stitches all over my face. My body was raw. I didn't know if I would look the same or look similar. And, I'm not going to lie, I was vain. I worked hard to stay fit, in my 40s, and I wanted to look the way I had looked the day before. I didn't know if that was going to happen. The hardest thing, though, was I couldn't think. The not only the traumatic brain injury, but just the trauma of, the randomness of that accident, of that moment, of losing control, of not being the powerhouse my kids depended on, my friends depended on. That I couldn't accept. I actually say there were moments, I would wake up, for the first several weeks, I would wake up every day and cry.
And that's natural.
Yeah.
That's, to me, if you didn't do that, I would wonder. But that would be expected. I would too. Okay, I would have too. Because so that's the other thing. It's not that I'm a bad sport, because I'm a good sport. I've been on losing teams. But whenever you lose something that was important to you, now, listening audience, if you follow me on Facebook, I put a couple-minute clip of Naseem on there. You will see she's very little. She's not like this big. She's very little. She's very attractive. So I see what she's talking about in terms of, whoa, I may not look like this again. So she's little, and you were fortunate enough that you didn't break any bones.
I didn't break any bones.
Your tininess might have helped you with that. I don't know which way it helped. But that's amazing that you didn't break any bones and you have a car on you.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I did, I told you I didn't really like to accept help, but, my doctors, my family, everyone forced me to get some help. And so even though I didn't want to accept help from people I knew, we did hire a trauma therapist. And my trauma therapist thinks it was a combination of my feeling like a badass in my 5-inch heels that day, just feeling good, and, being little. And then I also credit Starbucks. I don't know if they're a sponsor, but I credit Starbucks because I had been drinking a venti chai latte almost every day for, 15 years at that point. So I think, all that calcium made my bones strong.
Well, in any event, I'm just saying, because, see, this is where we can parallel Naseem's experience of being hit by a car with you being hit by anything in life. Yeah. In terms of, for me, it was a relationship issue caused by mental illness. So totally unexpected. So I understand what you're talking about whenever it's one way one day and something you almost blindsided totally now. Did you ever ask the question, why me?
I didn't ask the question, why me? So, you mentioned in the intro that I've been in sales for, 15, 20 years at that point. And so, if for anybody in sales, sales is a lot of rejection, and so through my sales career, and I was fortunate enough to work for Microsoft, Google, big tech companies. Every year there would be some motivational experience to kind of get you through that tough year and rejections. And many of those motivational speakers had gone through something difficult. So, I had this inventory of stories of people who went through crazy, horrible life events and came out of them. So I always said to myself, wow, if that ever happens to me, I hope I'm a person that comes out stronger. Now, I'll tell you, when it happened to me, coming out stronger was the last thing that
that was not on the mind.
But I think having that inventory and realizing that everybody goes through something.
Correct.
Made me, I'm not going to say I didn't feel sorry for myself, but it didn't make me ask why me. In fact, candidly, and I know this is a little silly, but there was a part of me that, was feeling, I told you I was feeling so good that day. When and the day before I said out loud to my son, he asked me, I was like, Mom, how's the new job? I'm like, I'm happy. It's like I jinxed myself, and so when it happened, when the car ran over me, I kind of felt like, well, you know what, maybe if this horrible thing happened to me, then my kids are going to be fine. The bad stuff that had to happen just happened to me. So I didn't have that why me.
Well, that's good because I'm looking through the book. Now, again, our listening audience, if you hear something and you want to, you can either text me the question or you can call in and ask Naseem the question. Number is 973-720-2738. I'm looking at now, I'm going through how the chapters and everything are named. So we had Just Stop, then we had Before. And you said the jinx, you were just talking about it. A beautiful spring day. But now we get into Broken Denial, I'm Fine. The Tipping Point, Too Soon, Questions and Connections, Unbreakable. And it goes on in terms of, let me see, we had Unbreakable, Sorry, Not Sorry, Paying It Forward, My Sermon, Love Big and Love Openly, Prioritize Shared Moments, Let People Help, Say Sorry, Don't Ask, Just Tell, Celebrate Your Cracks, Be Vulnerable and Connect. Sometimes we can't just think our way out of it, and we just know it's not always personal. Be net positive. Now, it's interesting because my friend, my partner right now, we always talk about, accepting each other, our flaws. Like, thank you for accepting me with my flaws. And so now you went from, I guess, not necessarily seeing yourself as having flaws to now, because of the accident, whoa, I'm damaged goods now, for lack of a better term. I've been damaged because of this car. Talk to us about...
Well, I've always had flaws. I wouldn't openly talk about them before. But now, my whether we call them flaws or issues or, I like to say cracks, I do talk about them because they're part of my journey. And, actually I should note, one of the very kind of key philosophies that helped me through the recovery was the philosophy of kintsugi, which is this Japanese art of golden mending, where you take a broken piece of pottery and you put it back together with gold inlay. And so you look at the pottery, you look at the vase or the pottery, and the gold inlay is about emphasizing its journey. So you're celebrating the cracks as part of the journey. It's no longer broken. And that really resonated with me because it gave me a way to talk about those things that in the past would always have just been weakness. Not as weakness, but as part of my journey. It's who I am now.
Again, it's about perspective. And so the issues or the flaws or the things that happen to us is a part of our journey.
Yes.
So the cracks in the pottery is a part of the journey.
Exactly.
So we did. Now, the person who hit you, what did they? Was it hit and run? Did they try to leave, or did they stay there, or were they like, oh my god? What was going on with the driver?
Oh, this is a complicated one. I'll kind of give the short story. Yes. I talk more about it in the book, but the driver never acknowledged anything. We have theories as to why she ran over me 3 times. It wasn't a hit. My husband didn't take a hit out on me. But essentially not much happened to the driver. She lost her license for 10 days, got a $200 fine, failure to yield to a pedestrian. And, all of that, fine, that's kind of court stuff. The thing that was hard for me that I will share is she never acknowledged it. She never said, I'm sorry.
Never faced you?
Never faced me.
Never, oh my God, I'm sorry. Because it was
not even at that moment.
Like you just said, it wasn't a hit, so I'm assuming it was accidental.
Yes, it was accidental.
So it was accidental, so you never came. I mean, maybe she couldn't bring herself to do it. I don't know. Maybe. That's odd. I mean, like, oh my God, yeah. I'm so sorry. You're still alive. I can remember years ago, because I'm a cyclist. I ride bikes. And I was cranking. I was probably going about 35, 40 miles an hour coming down the road, and a car cut me off. So when I squeezed the brakes, I flip up in the air, and I come down. I had my helmet on. I came down on my head. But the driver got out the car and just could not stop saying, I'm sorry. Yeah. They, oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay, I'm okay. I'm sorry. So that's amazing that someone hits you with a car and don't even say I'm sorry.
I would have taken one. I even just like some show of kindness or empathy or compassion towards me. But I'd seen her a couple times after, at the our lawyer's office and, at the courthouse, and never, there was never anything. And
I'm sitting
here. Even as I get flustered.
I'm sitting here jaw dropped again.
Yeah.
That the woman lived. The woman that hit her didn't do it on purpose and has yet to say, forgive me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I mean, wow. Yeah, okay, we can move on because I can see where that would frustrate me too, to a degree.
But let me kind of just note, look, it was really hard. I think it was one of the hardest parts of the recovery was not getting that human compassion. But I will say I think I learned some compassion for myself, which was also a new muscle that I built. And I talk about it's not always personal. Look, I think her way of dealing with this is pretending it didn't happen. And maybe my way of dealing with it is, letting her deal with it the way she has to, because I could hold on to, I could focus on the fact that she didn't say she's sorry, but that would just be me waking up with disappointment.
Well, see, again, we're kind of in the same boat. At some point, I don't do it on air. Folks on the radio land, they've probably kind of sort of figured it out based on, cryptic commentary. But one day we'll talk about it. But I know that feeling of the person that's done something to you not acknowledging it. Yeah. Going on with their life as if it never happened. Going on as if everything was okay, everything's fine. I never did this to that person. And so that I know exactly what you're feeling. Trust me when I tell you on that one. In that particular area of not being said sorry to, like I can almost take the fact that you did it if you were to say I'm sorry, or it happened if you were to say sorry. But we may never get that sorry. That's just the bottom line. We may never get that I'm sorry.
I don't think I'll ever get the sorry, and I've moved on.
We have to move on from it. Because that was my next question to you. All right, after the accident and everything, and now you're kind of recovering and you're coming back, how was the process of moving on? Because it has taken me 2 years now to even mention what I went through. The first couple of years, I didn't say nothing. Like maybe I could count on my hand the people that I would share my story with. It was about maybe 10, maybe it's up to 14 by now, other than what my Facebook posts or either cryptic messages here or whatever, that and the other. But it took me a long time to start talking about my story, and I still haven't talked about it in full.
So talking about the story, well, there are two parts of it. There's sort of the actual accident, which is, a very fascinating cocktail party story, being run over. And so, that was
run over.
Yeah. Yeah, if you ever don't know what to say, you can talk about, you heard about someone that was run over 3 times. So that part was easier. I should mention when I was in the hospital and the nurses and doctors found out that nothing was broken, they kept saying, oh my God, you survived for a reason, you have to pay it forward. And I was like, pay it forward? I can't even open my eyes, But I did have this little voice in the back of my head as I recovered is, how do I pay it forward? And, in the first year I would talk about the mechanics of the accident, and that was very easy. But what was harder was sharing what I learned. But I was purposely trying to think about what I learned. But talking about that was hard because that was the real personal stuff. That was, the moments reflecting on my kids and how I felt under the car. That was accepting that I wasn't, didn't have my mind operating the way it used to. So that took a long time, and I would say, in a year, I was talking about it at a high level, probably, I guess 2 years later was when we were in the middle of COVID, and that's when I started writing, because that's when I really felt, we're living this unbreakable day right now for so many of us. And I think, we need to hear from other people that you get through it. It's hard, but you get through it.
No, you're absolutely right, because you're right in terms of COVID. The fact that because millions of people lost their lives. I have family members who had underlying conditions that COVID came in and took them right on out. So you're right. The fact that we're still here does serve as us being unbreakable. That we made it through. Because sometimes when you reflect back on, COVID is making a comeback. in a different way. I think COVID's going to always be what it's just like the flu, like anything else. And it's like anything else. It's just going to be here. But the fact that we survived the initial time when so many people didn't, yes, it does have that unbreakable feel like I made it through that.
And you made it through, and I'm sure you've learned things. Your life has changed. The way you spent your days. The way you raised your kids, the way you interacted with friends, who became important, who was there, who wasn't, who you lost. All of those things, shape us.
No, absolutely right. And so, again, listening audience, my guest this morning, Naseem Rochette. Her book is The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over. I see you have some tabs in there. Is there anything in particular you wanted to read, or... I see you have it tabbed up, so I don't know if you had things you wanted to talk about, or if that's reminded us. But the experience is something else in terms of being conscious as an SUV is on top of you. Not having any broken bones, but at the same time having brain trauma and everything else that's associated with being hit by a vehicle. But now we're talking about how do you move on from that? And then to add insult to injury, the person who did it never acknowledged it or even just said, I'm sorry. Then you have everything else that goes along with, life change, because no matter how you look at it, I don't know if you have aches and pains from it, or I don't know if
I do.
Okay. Did you have to, because I know with my aunt, she literally had to go through learning how to walk again, talk again, write again, read again, everything, go right back through the basics to come back, from that.
So I had to have, in-home physical therapy several times a week to learn how to walk. I had nerve damage. I had to have a surgery on my eye. I didn't put in my tear duct. I have a torn MCL. It still gives out at any time. So obviously changed, the shoes I wear. I still have, back pain and neck pain. I mean, there's still issues, but to me, all of those things are minor compared to the joy that I feel that I'm alive.
And see, listening audience, again, this is not TV, this is radio. I did put a little clip of her on Facebook, but you would never know it by looking at her. By talking with her and interacting with Naseem, you would never know it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things, you asked me if it was hard and sharing the story. So people don't know it when they, you don't know what somebody's gone through when you look at them. You never know. And, there were times, I can't bear loud music. I can't go to concerts. I can't have flashing lights. But nobody knows that when they look at me. Nobody knows that I have a panic attack when I cross the street. So maybe when we're going out for lunch, my heart is racing. And you have to, determine whether or not you're willing to share those cracks. I, at some point when I first went back to work, I couldn't hide it. I didn't necessarily want to share it. I wasn't at my, enlightened, and I've never become enlightened. I still have to practice all of these things that I've learned from the journey. But I did find that when I shared those cracks, people were okay with it. They would bring me lunch. They didn't need me to cross the street. If I couldn't cross it, fine, we'll go to this restaurant on the same block. People are very accepting if you let them.
That's an interesting point, because what happens is in our minds, oh God, I can't tell nobody else because they're going to judge me, or they're going to think this, or they're going to think that. In reality, when you do share, you're right. One, either they don't care, or secondly, it's kind of like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Like, all right, then we'll make the accommodations. Glad you told us. I was at a family reunion this year, because you're going to say, man, this guy got a crazy family. No, I really don't. But I'm at a family reunion this year, and we're all talking about different things that's going on, and we hadn't seen each other in a few years. So each of us are sharing different things we've gone through over the last couple of years. So I have a cousin that tells me about another cousin, third or fourth cousin, whatever, who actually got caught up in a drive-by shooting. And she's sitting at the stoplight. Bullet comes through the side window and grazes the back of her head. She lived, but she still has the bullet fragment back there. And what you just said, she has the same experience. She can't do loud music. She has the panic attacks. All that was from being involved in that drive-by shooting. So, yeah, you're right. But you wouldn't know it from looking at people. Like you just said, to look at you would never know unless you told it.
No. And one of the other parts about telling it, And, when I was at home, before I even went back to work, the first several weeks, people would come by and help, and I would just push it away. I'd pretend I was sleeping, have someone else answer the door. But then at some point, when I realized the accident didn't just happen to me and that people needed to participate, I would call it, practicing weakness. I would let people come and sit with me. And these were, not necessarily close friends. These were people that I met on the soccer sidelines, that I knew in my community, that cared, that wanted to show kindness and help. And I found that as I started sharing my cracks, some of the things I was going through, they were sharing with me. People that I had known for years but didn't really know. I was learning about, sometimes cancers or deaths or lost jobs or, things they were struggling with. But what was amazing is that as we shared our struggles, then we got to share our victories and we got to celebrate together. And it just made the relationships even stronger.
Absolutely right. Listening audience, again, I hope you've been with me since 6. Certainly hope you've been with me since 7, since my guest has been here and we've been talking about her book. But it is Naseem Rochette. If you have a question, you can text it to us or you can call her and talk to her live on the air. The number is 973-720-2738. And as I said earlier, I'm not offended if the phone doesn't light up because I listen to radio all the time and I don't call either. So I understand. But I hope you're getting something and learning something out of this. And as she shares her story, understand that we all go through something one way or the other. For her, it was a life-changing moment, being under that car and surviving that. And you have a totally different perspective on going forward in life than you did prior to that.
I do. And actually, you had asked me a moment ago about the tabs in my book. And if I want to read something, I'm going to read you guys the definition of unbreakable day, which is what I call my holiday now, and I'm putting my reading glasses on. Luckily, you're not taking a picture of that. So, unbreakable day, the day that changes you and makes you realize how strong you are and reminds you how much you want to be alive. A holiday to commemorate the joy of life, to honor the strength we find to navigate unimaginable moments, and to appreciate the people and community that help us pick up the pieces and make it through life's complexities.
And see, that's the thing. No one is going to get through life without something. Now, your something may not be my something, but it's going to be something nonetheless. The question is, and I said this last week, the only way you get to the other side of through is to go through. You can't get to the other side of it. You can't leap over it. You can't get around it. You can't get under it. The only way to get to the other side of through is to go through. We don't have a choice. So, again, you're back to work? You went back to work?
Oh, yeah.
I
went back to work. I went back to work 8 weeks later.
Okay,
which
that was good.
No, it was not.
Oh, it was not good.
All my doctors, everyone said don't go back to work. But I was like, I'm me. I could go back to work. I sometimes I'm not the sharpest tool because not only did I go back to work, Mark, I went back to work on a trip to Vegas. My first day back was in Vegas, and I can't handle light or sounds or crossing the street. Vegas is not the place to go. But, I was, as I said, I never, fully became enlightened overnight. It was a journey, and at that moment in the journey, I was not ready to accept all those limitations.
So wait, you can't do loud music and lights and you go to Vegas.
Yeah.
Wow, another oxymoron. It's like we go
Not one
opposite.
of my best decisions. But, I will say I was glad I went to work because of how much it helped my kids.
Okay.
My au pair at the time said that the day I went back to work, it's like the kids were new kids because they felt like life was going to.
So, now you bring up the kids and what? Because like you said, the accident didn't just happen to you. It happened to everybody.
Yeah.
What were the kids' reaction to almost losing mom?
That was, that's probably the, one of the hardest parts of the story to even talk about was, so my kids at the time were 9, 11, and 13. My daughter, who was 13, who was born mature, really just stepped up immediately and kind of started taking care of things. she was helping around the house. She was, she washed the blood out of my hair. She did things no 13-year-old, no kid should have to do for their mother. And that was pretty traumatizing for her. For my sons, it was traumatizing in a different way because they, their sister was taking care of them in a way, but they were also, seeing that the mom who they depended on was gone. And she would tuck them in at night, and they would cry and ask her, is life ever going to be the same? Because, at the time, in those early weeks, I wasn't crafting a happy story.
Right.
Right. We were all pretty miserable. It was tough on all of us. And, my kids were also, my one son was so fearful of leaving me alone. And, my other son, at the time, actually, all of my kids, we called it cozy on the couch. And that's what they wanted to do. At the end of the day, sit on the couch, watch a show with me. And I would sit on the couch, but I couldn't have them touch me because I was too raw. I couldn't watch TV or hear the sound. So I would basically close my eyes and, try to block out everything, but pretend to them that I was there present, and for about a year, it was really hard on them because of my physical limitations. I did go back to work and it took everything out of me. I still needed 16 hours of sleep a day. So I would come home from work and just go straight to bed. And I was so exhausted, like physically and emotionally exhausted by trying to be normal at work, that I came home and unfortunately I had nothing left from my kids. But they didn't tell me that either because they wanted to take care of me. So, when I reflect on that and how hard it was and how much I didn't know that I was putting them through, because they also, they didn't want to burden me with, so they were burdening each other with like, shh, mom's sleeping, don't upset mom, don't play that too loud, and they were all tiptoeing around me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because see, this is the thing. If you've never, now, I don't know, listening audience, I don't know if you've been one who has never experienced trauma, because up until July 21st, 2021, I can honestly say I never felt as if I was traumatized. However, since that day, I can honestly say I was traumatized. Like you have your unbreakable day, I know my traumatization day. It was July 21st, 2021. And so once you've been traumatized, and this is where my question is going, do you ever totally get over the trauma?
So the trauma for me, so it's a demarcation point. There was me before and me after. And I don't know, and I don't look at it. And again, this is, my compassion to myself. I try not to judge myself, in terms of getting over it. It was, that was me before and me after. And yes, there are limitations, there are changes, but there are also benefits. There are also things that I learned. There are new insights, there's new relationships, there's a new level of sharing. But we have to be kind to ourselves, No,
absolutely right. Be kinder. And the reading that I had this morning from I kick the show off every morning reading from usually 2 books. Just happens so both of the books now by Iana Van Zandt. But she talks about just what you just talked about in terms of prioritizing yourself. Like you can have all these other things and you can serve all these other things, but at the end of the day, you really do have to take care of yourself too. You can't take care of all of that and not take care of yourself. Yeah. You have to do both. You can do both. It's interesting. I keep hearing you talking about that because I said this before you got on the air. I don't know if you were listening, tuned in the car or not on the way in, but I was sharing how after reading that particular passage, how if we were to drop, or let's say, for example, God forbid you hadn't made it, Google would have still been there. Google would still be there, and they would say how wonderful Naseem was. Oh, my God, we're going to miss Naseem. Oh, she was such a great person. Oh, Naseem. Oh, but eventually somebody would have filled your seat. So I'm saying all that to say, at the end of the day, these jobs are going to be there. we got to take care of us because the jobs are going to be there. And the flip side of that is I use the example on the airplane when they tell you, put your mask on first. You can't service anybody else if you're no good.
Yeah. And I think we all, focus a lot on being kind to others, but we don't talk a lot about being kind to ourselves.
Correct.
But what's so interesting, there's this children's book that we've kind of grown up, a philosophy we've kind of used in our house, which is about filling buckets. When you do something kind, you fill someone else's bucket, but it also fills your own bucket. And, I love that idea because it is, I think it's wonderful to give. And part of, why this experience has been so great for me is because I get to share and people share back,
Well, I tell you what, we're coming close to the end, not totally at the end. I'm enjoying the discussion so much, and I hope you're being helped out there as well. I always tell you all each week, listening audience, if nobody else is helped, I'm helped. So I'll be a little selfish there that if you're not being helped, that's going to be on you, but I can tell you I'm being helped just by listening to her and knowing what she's gone through. And yet she's able to tell her story, and she has such a good perspective and attitude about it. Yes, I was hit by a car, but you know what? I lived. Some people would still be dwelling on the fact that you got hit and not focusing on the fact that you survived.
People have asked me about that and about, do I kind of hold the bitterness, the why me? And, again, as we've been talking about this morning, Marc, it's the perspective, we control the narrative. And I could say, yep, you know what, that was the day that I stopped wearing stilettos. But instead I say, that was the day I realized I'm a superhero. I'm a badass. I got run over 3 times.
It really is about perspective. But that's a hard sell. Because not for everybody, for a lot of people, though, they will stay in that self-pity mode. They will stay in the pity party mode. They'll still be talking about 2018 when I got hit.
But who are you hurting?
Exactly.
You're hurting yourself. Be kind to yourself. Change your story.
That's exactly right. Like, okay, we know it happened.
Yeah. I heard this wonderful Confucius quote recently. And it is, and hopefully I get it exactly right. We lead 2 lives. The second begins when we realize we lead only one.
Wow. I'll have to process that. I got to think through that one. Wow, that's deep. I like that.
Yeah, I really liked it too. And I think it's kind of what, our unbreakable moments are about. They remind us, that there is one life to live. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let's celebrate.
No, you're absolutely right. And see, again, I am a big believer, firm believer in the power of words. That's another reason why the hat caught my attention, because it just says unbelievable, and it has the date on it. It has your May
Unbreakable
21st,
5/21.
Right, 5/21, right. But the biggest part of the hat says unbreakable. So when I wear this cap, I know I'm covered by I'm unbreakable. Yeah. That's when I put this cap on, because I have a collection of caps and I might wear a different one every day. But when I put the unbreakable one on, I'm letting folks know you can't bother me.
And unbreakable doesn't mean we're perfect. We're not flawless.
Right.
It means we're embracing our cracks.
Right. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Yes, partner, it is a wonderful interview. It surely is. I just got a text saying great interview.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you. And thank you for listening on this rainy morning.
Yes, indeed. And she's listening all the way out of Denver, Colorado. So, yeah, I have folks Naseem that listens out of North Carolina, South Carolina, Colorado, New Jersey, Florida. I mean, I got folks listening from all over the country.
So it's not raining everywhere.
No, it's not raining everywhere, but it's raining here. That's for sure. That is for sure. So I'll tell you what, at this point, this is what we do. You're going to have the opportunity to promote anywhere you're going to be, websites, your book. The only thing you can't say is a dollar amount. Anything short of a dollar amount, you can say anything you want about the book, websites, upcoming projects, anything you want with the exception of a dollar amount.
Oh, well, the only thing I'm going to say is, if you do buy the book and you like it or you have questions, feel free to reach out to me on social media. The book, as Marc has noted, is The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over. And actually, if you could write a review, that would be great too. But, look, the book is about, I think what I hope, you all have taken away from this morning is that we really do control our stories. And none of us are perfect. We all have cracks. And it takes a lot of strength to share those cracks. And it's, I think, that dimension of strength we don't think about or focus on enough, but it's probably one of the most rewarding aspects of being a strong person.
I do a lot of study. As a matter of fact, I'm back in school again studying leadership. And Anita, thank you so much. Anita Anderson, I saw she just texted me as well. I do a lot of studies on leadership. And one of the big things this time around in studying leadership is vulnerability.
Yeah.
Is allowing folks to see you be vulnerable. That goes a long way.
It really does. It sets a different tone. As we've talked about, when you're vulnerable, when you share your cracks, and people share their cracks, then you get to celebrate the victories.
No, you're absolutely right.
And it allows you to have a more rewarding journey together.
No, you're right. Because see, again, like I said, it has taken me. All right, first, I was divorced once. In my mind, I had no intentions of being divorced a second time. However, that's where it's going to wind up, and it's beyond my control. And that was difficult. And I mean extremely. Like I said, it's taken me up to the... Matter of fact, this is the first time I said the word divorced on air. And so the second one.
I'm proud of you.
They knew about my first one, but they didn't know the second one is pending. But in any event...
Sharing breeds
there you
sharing.
go. It does. It really does. And but I had no intents in my mind of being divorced. I knew what I went through with the first divorce. I said, I'm not going to do this again. So sure enough, here I am looking square in the face the possibility, or no, not a possibility, the inevitability of a second divorce. But it was beyond my control. Like I said, it was related to mental health, or mental illness, this, that, and the other. Beyond my control. I didn't cause it, can't control it, couldn't cure it. But you got to deal with it in terms of, like you said, you got to move forward. What did you learn from it? What have you learned? So from there, as you go forward. So you're absolutely right. As we share our stories, we have the opportunity to help somebody else. As a matter of fact, the text that I just got from Anita, she was saying it's very inspiring.
Thank you, Anita.
They're texting me instead of texting the system. That's okay. I'm good. It says, wonderful interview, inspiring. Thank you for sharing. Anita's calling out of North Carolina.
Oh,
She's
thank you
texting
so
out of
much,
North
Anita.
Carolina. So, all right. So, again, so I tell you, folks are listening. They may not call, but they are listening. That I know. And I record it, and it's going to be on my YouTube archives. And once I send you the links, I'm going to send you an MP3 link, and I'm going to send you a YouTube link. You can share them any way you want.
Excellent. And, if you want to reach out to me, my Instagram is Nasrocs, Nasrocs, at, I guess, Instagram.
Hey, wait, Nasrocs.
Yes, Nas for Naseem,
Right.
Rochette for ROC for Rochette, so Nasrocs.
So I thought it was rocks like
I do rock,
Naseem
but
rocks.
then it's confusing with the K. There's no K.
Right, that's
But it
why
is
when,
like Nas
so when
rocks.
you said Nas rocks, I'm like, okay, Nas rocks, yeah.
Nas rocks without the K.
There you go. Now that's a way for you to remember it. Nas rocks without the K. Nasrocs, right?
Right.
Nasrocs. That's her on Instagram. You on TikTok and all those too?
I'm not.
Okay, so I just got on TikTok, so I'm a novice at TikTok. But as far as LinkedIn, and Twitter,
I'm on LinkedIn.
Facebook, all of them, I'm on all of them.
Instagram. Yes.
Okay.
Social media is a muscle I haven't built yet. Be kind to me.
All right, as you can see, Naseem and I have had a blast. We've come down to the end of our interview time together. And again, let me give you the title of the book to make sure. Now listen, because the day that I met her, I bought the cap that day, and as soon as I got home, I downloaded the book on my Kindle.
And you could also listen to it if you want to hear me
it's an
reading
audio
it.
book.
There's an audible
you
as well.
You did your own audio book?
Yep.
Oh, good for you. All right, The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over. Wow, the unexpected benefits of being run over. And when she says run over, she's not talking figuratively. She's talking about being literally run over by an automobile. All right. Well, Naseem, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'm gonna change over into the 8 o'clock hour, and then I'll go out into the lobby with you. I'll let the listening audience, they can listen to some more gospel jazz, and then you can decide to hang out a little bit longer if you like, or I'll guide you out, what you need to do to get out.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everyone.